And welcome back in another hour of Priority Talk Radio here on Truth 101 WXJC. Good news, Christian values. And we're glad you're with us, and we pray you'll stay with us as long as you possibly can. We've got I think, going to be a fascinating conversation here. Kenneth Valentine is in studio with us. He's got a book, Cheating Death, and lives here in our area. And I'll just get right to it. I think what a lot of people are interested in, welcome in.
Thank you, Greg.
Ken,
glad to be here.
Is you spent a good many years as a Secret Service agent.
I did.
And protected presidents.
That's right.
And that is got a lot of people's interest right now.
It does. It does. You know, sometimes better or worse, but right
Yeah.
now it's a rough time to be a retared Secret Service agent. But
Yeah.
it's a good time to speak truth into what's going on and you know, give people good news about where we are and who's actually in charge. So it's I'm very, very proud of my service. 24 years again with Secret Service.
Yeah.
And 10 years full-time service on the president's detail with 3 different presidents.
Wow.
So it was a great career. I wouldn't trade a thing. Very, very pleased with where the Lord took me in my career and what he had me to do, but also glad to be retired about now.
Yeah. Well, I want to back up and sort of get your fuller story, but which presidents did you protect?
Right. So I started with the Secret Service in 1996. President Clinton was in
Okay.
office at the time, but I started in Louisville, Kentucky, from Tennessee, and the Secret Service said, "Yeah, we don't have an opening in Tennessee. We're going to send you to Louisville." So we were happy to go up there. But in 2000, I was sent to Washington to be on the president's detail full time. And it was the last year of President Bill Clinton's administration. So I was with him for 1 year. And back then it was a 5-year gig. So my first year with President Clinton, the next 4 with President George W. Bush.
And then did you Obama as well, I guess?
Right. So
you said 3.
It was a 5-year gig. So I rotated out.
Okay.
In fact, the photo, the cover of
Yes.
the book, is my last day on George W. Bush's detail. That was the inauguration in 2005. And then I rotated out. I was very blessed to be sent to Oxford, Mississippi, after I did a 2-year stint as a Senate Judiciary Fellow, working on Capitol Hill. I've got a law degree from Mississippi College. So I was Senate Judiciary staffer for 2 years, writing laws and advising Senator Orrin Hatch on judiciary matters, and then then they put me on Senator Obama's detail when he was running for president, and I got scooped up and promoted back to the president's detail when he went in as president. So so I'd spent another 5 years with him in Washington on his details as supervisor.
Yeah. Now, we don't have to read very far in your book, Cheating Death, and it's KennethValentine.com to see your Christian faith come through. Share with us sort of some of that story.
Well, I've got a story that's probably similar to a lot of people. I grew up in a fantastic Christian home with faithful parents, going back a generation even. But I was that kid in high school that wandered, and I went to youth group, but I led a double life, and that was true in through college until I was in law school, and I think the Lord used a friend of a friend to reach out to me, and I think he'd been working on my heart. But May 2nd, 1990, I was confronted by a fellow named Charlie, who's a pastor now, and he asked me just point blank, if you died tonight, would you go to heaven? And I gave him all the right answers with all the wrong reasons. So, so he said, "Hey, if you want to settle this tonight, we can, or today." And I took him on the challenge because he had graduated from law school. I was in law school. I was pretty sure, despite my upbringing, that you couldn't know with certainty that your salvation was assured. And so I said, "Yeah, I'll take you up on that. I would like to know today. Let's settle it." And he said, "Well, 1 John 5:13, that became my first favorite verse, because it says, 'I write these things to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life.'" And man, that's what I was missing. I wanted that. I wanted that assurance. I wanted to lay down at night knowing that if I died, I was going to heaven. And that was the missing link for me. And I think Charlie
Thank goodness
added
for Charlie's.
that link. Yeah.
For the
I'm
Charlies
grateful
out
for
there.
Charlie. He was in our wedding, so we paid him back already. So.
Well, your book is just I don't know if there's a page without some scripture on it. It's that kind of book, but tells your story, and I haven't been able to to fully read it, but I'm assuming you tell some stories in here as well about your time in service.
I do. You know, the book started as not a book. It started as letters to my kids. We have 5 children. Secret Service took me on a lot of trips, a lot of the time, and so I think I hit 74 countries in my tenure.
Wow!
And a lot of those countries you don't get the full appreciation for because we would hit them 2, 3, 4 times.
Yeah.
Or in and out. But my goodness, I went to South Africa 4 times. So and that's a long trip, a lot of wear and tear, a lot of time away from the family, and I had the most outstanding wife that put up with that and. Carried the water while I was gone and was very supportive of everything that we felt like the Lord gave me to do with this job with the Secret Service. But I'm writing letters, and I'm writing letters to my kids, and I feel like I'm a broken record, probably telling them the same thing. And I would seal these letters up on, hotel stationery, and I'd go down to the front desk and mail them with a foreign stamp on them. And, the thought was always, well, if I don't make it home, maybe this letter will. And at least they'll have something from Dad that was fresh right before his plane went down, or he got hit by a bus or whatever whatever happened. But I didn't die. I kept not dying. I kept living, and so I've got all these letters, and I've got a folder full of letters to all the kids that I give them on a birthday. They're all still sealed up, and so I pass them out like some kind of gift, it's different occasions. But when I got promoted at one point to go to Philadelphia, and that one was a move without the family, and we were only 3 hours away in D.C. But instead of turning on the TV at night, I sat down and started writing, and the information was fresh because I'd been writing letters all along, but I'm writing advice. It's just advice, and I was up there for a year and a half. It started to look like chapters in a book up in Philadelphia. And so I'm talking about faith and identity and decision making. I talked about leadership, friendship, hardship, protecting yourself, guarding your heart. That's when I first thought book, because I'm noticing, the division here in topics. And then I put it away. We got sent to Oklahoma and then back to D.C. and then I retired.
Well, you didn't think much about moving, did you?
No, 7 times.
That's that life, though, right?
7 moves. Yeah, we've lived in a lot of places, but when we moved to Birmingham, it was to take a corporate security job, and I pulled out this thumb drive, and I'm curious what was on it because it wasn't labeled, and I opened it up, and here's all this writing that I've done, and I started reading, and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this, and I'm reading it thinking this isn't half bad. And so I started working on it at night and just fleshing it out. And I talked to a buddy of mine about how to give this to the kids, because I knew he had done some books, and it turned out he had published 100 books. And he said, well, you care if I take a look at it? And I said, no. And so he looked at it and he said, hey, brother, if you just want to have this bound and give to the kids, he said, I can recommend a company that'll do that, and you'll have it ready for Christmas. He said, but I really think you got something here. He said, I think people are going to want to read this. So let's look for a publisher. And so we did. It wasn't right away, but it wasn't that long, really. And Post Hill Press, which is part of Simon & Schuster, agreed to publish it. And so here we are. I got a book out there.
Wow. Kenneth Valentine. It's called Cheating Death. 3-time presidential Secret Service agent lives to tell you how. When you retire from being an agent, I'm just going to ask dumb questions, all right? So you can give me good answers.
Bring it.
Are there? Can you talk freely, or are there things you can't tell, or what are you held to, bound to, or not?
Yeah. Well, there are some things that I wouldn't tell.
Wouldn't tell. Okay.
Yeah.
Wouldn't and couldn't's different, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah. The classified information, means and methods, those are can't tell.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And then there are some other just kind of details about how things are done or what happened. that it's more form over function, and so it's like shouldn't tell, you know. And I don't want to be the guy that divulges, some facet of what we do that gives the enemy a leg up.
Because I got a lot of questions, so if you can't answer it, just tell me.
Come on.
Because I do have a lot of questions. I know people are going to wonder, and I think I saw he had endorsed the book or something along the way. Did you work with Dan Bongino?
I did, yeah.
Okay, because I think I saw his name attached somewhere.
Yeah, he endorsed the book.
Okay.
And Dan, the funny thing is, Dan wrote about me in his first book.
Okay.
And he wrote about this trip that we did, where I was actually his mentor in the Secret Service for his very first lead advance. And so
did he talk a lot then too?
Oh my word!
Okay,
yeah,
so nobody was surprised the guy could did what he did.
No,
okay.
Nobody was shocked. But on the way back from this trip to Ohio, Dan and I are talking, and he's telling me about his struggle to decide whether or not he's going to leave the Secret Service and potentially run for office, which is what he eventually did.
Yeah.
In his book, he gave me the dubious credit of having talked him into leaving and running for office. And I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't hear that advice very well, because that's not what I said. And what I told him, I gave him my personal decision-making tree for making hard decisions. There are 4 points to making hard decisions that it's not good for every circumstance, but it's certainly a good model to. And it's not the only way, but it's a way.
Yeah.
And so I called him up, and I said, hey Dan, 2 things. Number one, I'm going to correct what you said in your book, in my own book, and I'm talking about the very same advice that I gave you that you butchered in your book. And he said, wait a minute, you wrote a book? And I said, yeah, I've written a book, and I'm looking to get it published. And so Dan, he didn't do the written endorsement, but on his radio show he's endorsed it a few times, and he's had me on his show a few times.
Well, I was going to say he should have you on.
Yeah, he's had me on a couple of times. So,
okay,
yeah.
well, outstanding. Kenneth Valentine, his book's Cheating Death, and I got a lot of questions for you. I'm going to say you're probably the first Secret Service agent that's protected presidents that I've ever spoken with. So, and I've interviewed a lot of people over the years. So I got questions, and I know our listeners want to hear your thoughts on the current stage of current status of events with 2 recent assassinations. And I know you can speak on those because you've been doing so in national media the last month or 6 weeks or so. I think you were on Fox Business this week. I don't know where else, but what'd you say? You've done 10 or 12 interviews this week?
This week, yeah.
Yeah. So you're being called on quite frequently to kind of give a perspective on what's going on. So we're going to get into that as well. Kenneth Valentine is our guest. Let's take a break and we'll come back on the other side. Thank you for being with us. Greg Davis here, and we continue our visit with Kenneth Valentine. You can get his new book, Cheating Death. I say new book. It's been a little while. Cheating Death at KennethValentine.com. 3-time presidential Secret Service agent lives to tell you how. Now, you mentioned the presidents that you served.
Yes, sir.
And George W. Bush being the first one, Clinton, and then George W.
That's right.
So tell me about 9/11. I mean, obviously you were around.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well,
on that day.
The interesting thing about 9/11, I remember it was the first time in my tenure on the president's detail that I got 2 days off in a row. And that's
Wow.
just, you kind of, you don't think about that stuff, but between the president's schedule, it's a small detail, and the need for people, it's just tough to get agents 2 days off in a row. It's rarely, if ever, on a weekend. But 9/11 happened on a Tuesday,
right.
And I had Tuesday and Wednesday off, which, again, in theory, because I didn't have those 2 days off after 9/11.
Didn't turn out that way.
But I was actually being mentored that day by a fellow out of Pennsylvania named Jack Kranz, and he was leading me and a friend of mine, another believer, talking about leadership in the faith and different things. And he was the one who had the TV on and was asking, hey, guys, do you see what's going on here? And, of course, we didn't. We had one TV in the house, and it wasn't anywhere near it. Didn't have cell phones, had a pager, And so we kept talking. I'm picturing a Cessna hitting the building in New York City. You know, it's happened before.
Yeah.
It happened, you know, other places in the country. And then my pager went off, and Jax was the one who said, "Hey, fellas, I don't think this is." So he said, "Something's going on. You guys better go." So I called in. You know, the old pagers, you got a number to call, and so I called in, and they said, "Hey, are you watching the news?" And I said, "Well, I just turned it on." And I said, "Where do you want me to go?" And they said, "Well, pack a bag and stand by, and we'll let you know where we need you." And I said, "All right, I'm ready to go," because now we see it's a terrorist attack. Now we know something's up, and a second plane had hit. So I packed a bag, and I'm waiting on pins and needles, ready to go. And you know, if for those of us who lived through that, who are kind of sheepdogs, you know, we were ready to go tear somebody up, and I was ready to go. The next call was the one I was waiting on, and get a page, call this number, and I called in, "Where you want me?" And they said, "Hey, we're just checking to see if you packed a bag and you're standing by." And I said, "Well, quit asking. Yeah, I packed a bag and I'm standing by. I'm ready to go. Let's go. And why don't I just come on in, you know?" And they said, "No, stand by." So the third call came in, and now it's getting into the evening, you know, and I've been sitting around all day watching planes crash into buildings, and they said, "Hey, we don't need you." And you know, I've never heard anything so horrible in all my life as "we don't need you." I'm a jacked up Secret Service agent on the president's detail, and I'm ready to go. You know, I'm ready to do some damage and do whatever I have to do for my country. It's under attack, and protect the president, and I'm being told "we don't need you." That was horrible. And I argued, told them I was coming in anyway, and all this stuff, and they said, "No, you do not want to be downtown right now." And so I went back to watching TV, and about an hour later they called again and said, "Get down here immediately." So it's like, you know, players want the ball, right?
Right.
I mean, I was ready to go.
Yeah.
Coach finally put me in, and I went screaming into D.C. We lived out in Chantilly near Dulles Airport, and it was the silence was deafening out there because there were no planes flying. And on my way into D.C., I was going at a rather high rate of speed, which you can't do normally in D.C. It didn't take me long to get in. There were 0 cars headed eastbound on I-66. Westbound, I counted 2 cars moving, and I go through the East Street Tunnel, and I come up into D.C. proper, and the first thing I see, because it's now dark, is the barricade, and there's military tanks and vehicles in the streets, and there are a lot of big guns pointed at me. And they hadn't seen cars coming into town, just cars leaving. And so I showed some ID and went through 3 checkpoints before I got to the White House checkpoints, and then you know, started the normal process. So I finally get in, and we get briefed. There was so much uncertainty. People just did not know if we were going to be under a ground attack, if there were other, you know, bombs coming, planes. We just didn't know. You know, the intelligence was all over the place, and so there's so much uncertainty. But we went to work. I was responsible that night for President and Mrs. Bush, and we started doing what we normally do at night, and we're just there protecting. And
because he wanted to be back in the White House.
He did, and he insisted on going back to the White House.
He wanted people to see normalcy and not fear.
You bet.
Yeah.
And so about midnight, President and Mrs. Bush are in bed. I trust they were asleep. And we get the crackle over the radio that says, "Hey, we are tracking," this is our command post, the Joint Operation Command Center for the White House, saying, "Hey, we are tracking an inbound aircraft," which that was wrong. I mean, everything was grounded, so you shouldn't be tracking an inbound aircraft. Where'd that come from? It had to have snuck up from, you know, off radar from overseas. This is what we're thinking. Yep. And so all you get in those scenarios from the Joint Operation Command Center is the direction of travel, a speed, an altitude, and a distance to the White House. And all of those were bad. So it was on a beeline for the White House coming from the south. It was a little lower than it should have been, and it was going super fast, about 500 miles an hour. And we had about 90 seconds projected impact. So,
wow.
So, you know,
after what you've seen that morning.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, I mean,
and so it made a difficult situation easy because you have to evacuate, and that's what we did. My buddy Jeff was in charge that night, and so he gave the call to evacuate. Well, that's great, because we're going to get out of harm's way and we're going to take the president and first lady with us. The problem was for one unlucky soul was that the protocol at the time dictated that, and we'd rehearsed this over and over and over. Everyone knew the drill. But the protocol was that we make the evacuation. One person, though, has to cover the evacuation. So you're almost like you're protecting the six. You're watching their back as they evacuate. You would then be the point if they, if the all clear came as they're evacuating, you would turn around and be the point for them to come back in. And your job after the evacuation is to stay and fight. And it's really built on a ground attack scenario, but in this situation, you're fighting an inbound aircraft from inside the White House. I've got a machine gun, a pistol, a radio, and a gas mask, and I realized pretty quickly I'm a little outgunned here. And I've been watching airplanes crash into buildings all day long, and seeing what happens there, a fireball and catastrophic results. So the seconds are ticking off, and so I went over to the western side of the hallway. The original White House box has a western wall that leads to the colonnade and then the west wing, and I kind of figured the archway there would be the most likely place that I could survive a plane hitting the White House, and that's only if it hits high enough that it doesn't just dive into the ground right there. And I got to tell you, I got there and then it just got real quiet. And I had a few moments. I figured I had maybe 20, 30, 40 seconds before this was game over. And I realized, I'm like, well, maybe I can survive. Maybe I can survive. And then it just, it hit me. There's no way you're going to survive this. So this is it. This is game over. And I go back to May 2nd of 1990 when Charlie asked me, if you died tonight, would you go to heaven? And here I am again, confronted for real with this issue, and the peace that I had in that moment surpasses all understanding. And I had enough time to pray, and so I just thank God for the life I'd been able to live, for the wife that He gave me, for the kids. We had a daughter at the time and a little boy, and I just prayed, Lord, would you provide for Sandra a better husband, and would you make sure that it's somebody that will be a good daddy to my little girl? And I got that out, and then it was just utter peace for a few seconds before they said, "Hey, we're clear." I'm like, "What do you mean we're clear? Where's this airplane and what happened?" And it turned out, we're now trying to get the president and first lady back in the White House because it was an Air Force jet that was told to go up to D.C. and it was coming, I think, from Shaw Air Force Base down in South Carolina. But if you set a course for D.C., you're keying navigationally. You're keying off the 0 milestone. And in D.C., the 0 milestone sits on the south grounds of the White House. Mm-hmm. So you're literally pointing your plane at the White House and then doing what jets do, go super fast. And he was on the wrong frequency, no transponder turned on. And so I think what happened is they circled the Andrews Air Force Base jets.
They're lucky they didn't get took down.
Well, we think that's what happened is he got his radar went off that said, "You've been locked on, you're about to be shot down." Yeah. And he got on the right frequency pretty quick. And so I like to joke, the punchline to this whole story is that I thought I was going to die tonight, but that Air Force pilot came a whole lot closer to dying than I did.
Wow. Well, that's the book, Cheating Death. Presidential Secret Service agent tells you how. And that's I think that sums it up about as good as anything can.
Well, that's the double entendre. Is cheating death is what we believe we're doing through faith in Jesus Christ and through a relationship with Him. Death does not win, and when we die, we go to eternal salvation with Him. And so you cheat death in that way, and so that was the real meaning behind the title. Yeah. And, it was a term that we used on the President's Detail. We would talk about cheating death, and it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek notion to keep things light, but to remind each other of the seriousness of the mission And when we don't do our job, people tend to die because the people we protect are people that someone else wants dead.
Yeah. Well, and I guess one of the criticisms of the book to the general public has been this book's full of scripture. So,
yeah, I've gotten
but our audience will appreciate this.
Yeah,
so
I've gotten a few reviews on Amazon that complained about how much scripture was in the book, and it's like, well, sorry, but not sorry.
Well, KennethValentine.com, you can find the book, and he's here local in our area, so and able to come and speak, and we can tell more about that as we go forward as well. But we got to take a break, and so we'll come back on the other side and get more into maybe some of the current issues that are facing us now, and get your thoughts on the status of the Secret Service and these assassination attempts. I'm itching to hear what you got to say about it. All right, we'll be right back. KennethValentine.com, and we've got more to come. Stay with us. Priority Talk Radio, welcome back. We're continuing our conversation here on Truth 101 WXJC, or you may listen later at other various radio outlets and also through our podcast. We're glad you're with us. We're visiting with Kenneth Valentine here in studio. His book, Cheating Death. He's a 3-time presidential Secret Service agent, and he lives to tell you how. And we've already given that message. And wow. Well, you're high in demand right now to talk about Secret Service issues. You know, the Secret Service is something everybody, it's kind of is a little enamored with. You know, it's kind of neat, and what you don't know, it's secretive, and all this kind of stuff. But you guys are, to me, kind of like referees. You don't want people talking about you, because if people are talking about you, that means you had to get involved, or you got involved.
Yeah. Well, the saying inside the Secret Service is, we don't want to be the story.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm saying. And same way when you're officiating or refereeing, you don't want to be the story. It's not about you.
Yeah, great analogy.
Well, where were you? I mean, I want to talk through both of these recent attempts of assassination on Donald Trump. Where were you? And when you saw what went down, what were your thoughts? Were you like shocked, not shocked, couldn't believe it happened? Then the more you saw, what did you think? Let's go back to Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, I was in my mom's hospital room up at Vanderbilt. She was in there for heart trouble, ended up being open heart surgery, and she was sharing a room with somebody else. And I started getting text messages and phone calls, and so I had them turn the station to find out what was going on. And I got to admit, I was completely shocked. Never obviously seen this in my lifetime. We've studied assassination attempts. It's one of the things you do as a brand new agent when you're going through training, is study, study, study. We watch these things over and over and over, every possible angle, and it informs you about how to do that job and to do it effectively. And we feel like we've got the best methodology, the most robust protocols of any agency in the world. And then to watch that obviously not play out it left me with so many questions that day, and so much just utter frustration at how could that possibly happen, given the training, the know-how, the threat level, all these things. It's almost like a different language. Like it just did not want to compute, and so it left me with many more questions than answers, certainly that day. And
when you saw how it went down, and from a rooftop that close, what did you think? Just an absolute breakdown, failure? I mean,
absolutely unacceptable. Because two things. Number one, you look at the assets and resources that they brought to bear out there for this outdoor rally, and one of the key assets is the presence of the counter snipers. And so not every event do you get counter snipers, but for an outdoor rally of that magnitude and with his threat level, not surprised to see counter snipers. But I was terribly surprised to see that they did not take away all the avenues for putting rounds into a secured area. And just off the top of my head, I came up with about 7 ways to prevent that from happening. Even if you don't prevent the bullets from coming in, say it's just a screen or a banner or some big flags, you do take away the ability of someone to effectively use a scope to put down rounds in a terribly intentional way. We used to call it spray and pray. And we would talk in terms of, well, we've not thwarted the spray and pray, but we have thwarted the ability of someone to put crosshairs on someone, and neither of those was done in Butler. So it just
breakdown of communication. You think is that a big part of it?
Oh my word!
Not enough assets, breakdown in communication from the ones who were on the ground.
Yeah.
All the above. I mean,
the more we heard, the more frustrating it got, because let's start with the fact that rounds were able to penetrate a secure area. It's just not secured if someone can put rounds in there.
Yeah.
So you've got to break down there. I will say that the reaction of Trump's detail was magnificent.
Yeah.
Great reaction, fast. I know a couple of those guys from when I was a supervisor on the president's detail. They were the young guys coming up, and so I've got to give them credit. They reacted exactly the way we do in training. As soon as you hear the sound, you don't have to see where they came from or anything. You just need to hear the sound, and you immediately jump on them, get them down under protective cover.
And since you know some of these people, I want to be careful, but you did have an agent or two there that maybe seemed too small. One had trouble with her gun, with her handgun. Was that surprising? I mean,
was that bit.
Okay? I'm trying to be nice.
I would
not knocking the person, but they were there.
Yeah.
So
So my first, kind of heartache with this was that the line of sight wasn't blocked. The shooter had an opportunity to put down effective fire, which is just unconscionable. And then, secondly, when the news started coming out about the fact that he had already encountered law enforcement, it's like, well, the protocol is that if you have a perimeter and then a buffer zone and then another perimeter, and if you're going to get through that outer perimeter, you have to go through a magnetometer, and you're funneled to the inner perimeter. The buffer is clean, and there shouldn't be anyone except police in that buffer. And I'm not sure how they built that. I still haven't seen that exactly portrayed, but there were police in that buffer area, but there are also civilians in that buffer area that I don't know if they went through a magnetometer or not. He didn't.
And those are the ones that are saying, hey, there's a guy on the roof?
Exactly.
That's that area?
Exactly, yeah, that's that area. And this building apparently wasn't inside a perimeter, and he was able to get up on the building, but he encountered law enforcement, and that I don't know how that wasn't passed, or if it was passed, it did not get communicated. What would normally happen is you would have an agent and a police officer out there. They would encounter bad guy, and they would both be radioing that back to the command center, the security room. And the security room then sends that to the detail, and they would immediately pull. If they said we just encountered a man with a gun on a rooftop, a couple of things start happening quickly. Number one, the snipers are now trained on where the problem is, because I guarantee you they'd already range found that building. They'd looked at it and numbered it, and they knew that building.
Well, and then the president's going to get covered up quickly.
And they would, you
don't have to hear shots.
At that point, they just would have pulled him off the stage.
Yeah, pulled him, right.
Pull him off the stage and send him backstage, out of the line of sight, out of fire. And that didn't happen. So that's just, that's hard for me to understand. It's difficult to explain, but clearly a breakdown in communication between the Secret Service and the local law enforcement.
Right,
and, unfortunately, our director came out, my knee jerk would have been to get to a podium and say, this is our responsibility, before he even got to the hospital to be assessed. I mean, you've been given the responsibility, the mission, I would even call it the privilege of protecting someone. And if they leave the stage bleeding from a gunshot wound, then you failed, period. It's your mission, it's your responsibility, it's your privilege. So you should have come out and said, this is on us, and let someone prove that it wasn't your fault. But it's on you. So that was a little hard for me to hear.
Well, she was a disaster in the aftermath. I mean, no doubt about it.
No
till
doubt.
she sat before the congressional committee. I mean, that was unbelievable, really. I mean, just breathtaking. Well, then now we have the second attempt
Right.
this week. Your thoughts on that, and then I want to get to sort of the bigger picture of what maybe, where is the Secret Service? But what about the golf course there? And I've actually driven that road before there, and so I'm somewhat familiar with it. It's just a public road,
Right.
And I'm not saying I knew all this when I went by there, but I've seen it. I understand the feeling of it. Just some shrubs.
Yeah.
That shouldn't have happened either, should it?
Well,
especially continuing you're coming off already an attempted assassination.
Right. Well, what the acting director said, for what it's worth, he said, well, this was an off-the-record movement, and what that means, that's code for we didn't know about this.
Yeah.
and we're going to do it anyway. And so they have less time, and because of the time, they have fewer resources that they can get out there.
So he's home. He says, "Hey, I'm going to go play golf. Let's go."
Yeah.
And they go, "Okay, we're going to do the best we can."
Yeah. And off the record, in its truest sense, means nobody knows about it. The president told his inner staff, "Hey, I want to go get ice cream over at Jerry's Ice Cream at 2:00 today." And so then the staff or the president tells someone with Secret Service, "Hey, could we go do this?" Or "We're going to go do this." Make sure it happens. And given enough time, we'll go over to Jerry's Ice Cream shop and check it out. We won't announce who we are. We'll just go over and check it out. If we get to Jerry's Ice Cream and there's already a crowd buildup with people that have signs that say, "Welcome, Mr. President," and cameras and media and all these, well, now we know we just got beat. Because it's not off the record. That is not an off the record movement. It was only off the record to the Secret Service, and I've seen that. I mean, I've seen that in D.C. where the president's staff says nobody knows about it. We're going to go here, and you get there. We went to the Lincoln Memorial one night, and it's like apparently we were the only ones that didn't know
that you were going.
And
okay.
it's like this is not not
Well, do
ideal.
you think the guy in the bushes? My thought was. Trump plays golf a lot on weekends and Sunday afternoons. You probably have a general knowledge he's there.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, I'm sure that's probably able to be surmised if you.
Well, that's the problem.
And he hid out there for a long time, maybe just hoping.
Yeah, and that's the problem with the off-the-record notion is that, like I said, a true off-the-record means nobody knows about it. President Trump, everyone knows when he shows up at his resort.
Sure.
Well, he's got a residence there.
Yeah.
Everyone knows when he's in town because the security posture changes.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be hard to know.
And they know he likes to go golfing on Sunday morning.
And you can predict on a Sunday he's going to play golf.
It's a little predictable.
Yeah,
so the notion of it being off the record, it doesn't sit well with me because you could have predicted this. And apparently someone did. And he took an AK-47 out there predicting that the president's going to be out here within a matter of hours. And he laid in wait for him. Praise God that the Secret Service, the methodology for a golf course movement is the same whether it's on the record or off the record with the detail. And so they do a bubble. It's a kind of a shifting, morphing 360-degree coverage, but it gets thin in places, it gets fat in places, and you're working these holes, and it's kind of like a slinky. You stretch it out and then you bring it back. The problem, he used the fact that it was an OTR as the reason why in his words, we didn't sweep those bushes. We didn't check the bushes. And that to me is kind of significant because I don't, it had, Monday morning quarterback, here I am, but I wouldn't have been satisfied with that. I think I would have said, well, you've got a point over here. They know this golf course backwards and forwards.
Yeah,
There's a point over here at which you can not only take a shot but get away. It's a parking lot or a natural place to run from where you can get away. There's a fence built in to prevent people from chasing you. So
and he did get away if someone hadn't have seen him and took a picture.
That's exactly right.
And just a citizen.
That's a point of failure where you simply put a police officer, a deterrent. So when you go walking up with your AK-47, the police officer says, "What you doing?"
Yeah.
And you keep them from doing that. And if that gives away the fact that the president's playing golf, well, it's probably not the only giveaway. So, lesson learned maybe, but, the methodology, you got to admit the methodology worked. The question is, how close do you want to make it? And that's a little close. AK-47 is a pretty big weapon, and it can put rounds a long way with really devastating effects.
How often do you think, in this current climate we're in, do you think that, there's been two pretty close attempts here, okay? One attempt and one near attempt, according to how you define attempt. But how often, we'll just use Trump for example, how often do you think that there is a threat, someone or someone's attempting to take his life day in, day out, event by event, or movement by movement? How often is that? Are these two people tried and two people almost succeeded, or do people try all the time and these two just got closer than most?
My suspicion, not a factual thing, but the threats are out there. There are, and you got to say both of these guys had mental problems, so
sure.
they had their own issues. Those people are out there, and they're making threats or making plans.
Threats, and they're making plans.
I would say there are people.
Do they
out
carry
there,
them out?
Well,
do they go show up and walk around and go, "Can I get in?" Does that happen like every day?
Any good Secret Service agent believes that that's happening every single day. And that's the threat environment that we believe that we're in. And no matter who you're protecting, you're thinking that guy is out there and that guy wants to do harm, and we've got to stop him. And if we don't do our job today and do it to the best of our ability, bad guy's going to win.
So you have to think that to create a sense of urgency among yourself.
Yeah.
But are they really trying to? I guess is you have to think they are. You have to assume they are.
Right. And
I guess you don't know.
Well, sometimes you don't know, and sometimes you don't get the verification that bad guy, idiot was out there. Sometimes you do, and a lot of times we will arrest these people on a perimeter, and then think about it. This kid walked around Butler, PA, without his gun, scoped out, saw what he needed to see, went back and got his gun. Well, what if he'd been intercepted there without his gun, but someone said, "Dude, you seem to be walking around here a little aimlessly. Yeah. You're looking at stuff. You've got this rangefinder. Yeah. What are you doing?" Had he been intercepted at that point,
wouldn't have never
certainly,
heard about it.
They go back to his vehicle and they're like, "Hey, you've got weapons and explosives," and that's going to be a story that gets buried because nothing really happened, but it's out there, and that happens, and it happens pretty frequently.
All right, got to take a break. Kenneth Valentine in studio, KennethValentine.com. Cheating Death is his book, a 3-time presidential Secret Service agent. We'll be right back. And we're back in as we wrap up this hour with Kenneth Valentine and his book, Cheating Death, a must-read, KennethValentine.com. So we talked about these two events, and we just before we hit the top of the hour, and then I want to carry over to next hour as well, because I want to get back to some of what you're doing to help people out there and encourage people and speak. And we mentioned a lot of the news interviews you're doing right now, national interviews. But what's the status of the Secret Service? I hear you saying, I never had 2 days off in a row. They say we need more money, but does throwing more money at something, does that fix the issues? Usually not. Give me a few minutes of just what's your summation of the Secret Service, the morale, all of this kind of stuff that plays into all of this being able to happen.
Yeah, no, great question. I'm actually grateful you asked, because, when I loved 24 years of a career at the Secret Service, I really wouldn't change a thing. I absolutely was thrilled to do everything I got to do, and it really wouldn't change a thing. So Secret Service is beloved by me, but looking at the Secret Service now compared to the career that I had, it has changed, and it has not changed for the better. When I came in, the Secret Service was part of Treasury, and Secret Service was created under Treasury because we were originally a financial crime. Yeah. Lincoln created the Secret Service the day he died, but it wasn't to protect presidents. A total irony, but it was all about counterfeiting, and it has morphed into financial crime investigation. And good investigators make good protection agents, and maybe not vice versa. So it's important that we have that dual mission, and it's important that after 3 presidents were assassinated, they finally said, let's give protection to somebody, and they gave it to the Secret Service because we're the only game in town. But after 9/11, the Secret Service was moved from Treasury to DHS, and that's when DHS was created.
Homeland Security.
Yeah, Department of Homeland Security. And, of course, you never think you have enough autonomy, that you could do better somewhere else and the grass is greener. And so the Secret Service took the bait. We thought this would be a great move. And, the original depiction of the department was a pyramid with the secretary at the top and all the law enforcement at the very bottom, and a huge bureaucracy in between. But the Secret Service was depicted as a circle outside the pyramid. And we thought, this is perfect, because that'll give us the autonomy we need to lead, to innovate, to do all the things that we would like to do that, maybe we're not getting to do. I think by the end of the first week, we were under the pyramid, and we were, scratching and fighting, clawing for personnel, for resources. We've got the same pay, the same retirement, all the same benefits as every other federal law enforcement agency out there in DHS. But the existence is different. You don't get 2 days off in a row, not on a weekend. You don't get holidays and anniversaries and weekends. And, we have 6 months of blackout period in the Secret Service because the demands of the job are that intense. Well, nobody else has that. And so Secret Service is just a different mindset. It's a different experience. And a lot of people get tired. They get burned out of that. And so they can jump to another federal agency, and guess what? If they're from Kansas City, and they're stuck in D.C., these other federal agencies will give them a full paid transfer to Kansas City, and they get a top flight agent with a top secret security clearance and great training, and so most of these other federal agencies will be at least half former Secret Service.
Yeah.
So the move to DHS was not a good one, and I think
so you're saying it needs to be moved out of that.
It really needs to be moved back to Treasury, where they can lead themselves, where they can innovate. There's new technology out there. Base molecular resonance is out there that Secret Service can't touch because of DHS. So the move would be good for them to get out from under that oppressive regime that can't seem to even figure out how to secure the border. So how are they going to protect presidents? So
just more money, though, is not going to.
More money.
More money's not suddenly going to make Donald Trump or Kamala Harris safer.
It's not going to make them safer or change the everyday experience of a Secret Service agent.
Yeah, but that's the typical government answer is let's just throw more money at it.
Well, that's what all these congressmen are saying.
Yeah.
We gave them $9 million more. Well, that's great, but how about move where leadership counts?
And we got to go. Are agents retiring and they're not able to fill with the same kind of quality people? Is that happening due to DEI and things like that?
I think that is happening. I certainly see a difference in who they're going after. When I was hired, 1 in 10,000 applicants made it to be an agent, and now I think it's significantly lower. So they're hiring fast. They're hiring furiously, but the back door is leaking agents.
That's kind of what I
figured. They're quitting,
figured.
They're transferring, they're retiring, and
that's morale, and that's all of those things.
All those things.
Yeah. All right. We got to go. I want you to stay over one more segment, though, and I want to get back to your book and sort of what you're doing now and kind of get back to some of that big picture stuff. All right. Kenneth Valentine with us, his book, Cheating Death, a 3-time presidential Secret Service agent here in studio with us. We'll be right back. Stay with us till the next hour. Be good. We know it. And we thank you for being with us for another hour of Priority Talk Radio. Greg Davis here with you on Truth 101 WXJC. Good news, Christian values from 5 until 7 each weeknight. We are doing something we don't normally do, which is carrying over a guest from 1 hour to the next. Kenneth Valentine is with us. He's got a book out, Cheating Death. He is a 3-time presidential Secret Service agent, and he lived to tell you how to live, basically. And that's the message of salvation. And if you've missed the last hour of us talking, please go back and find it at our podcast page or at the video podcast on all of our outlets, including our social medias and all the different places. I didn't even mention, we do have this available as video as well for people to watch. And we'll post it all out there. But you served 3 presidents as a Secret Service agent, Clinton, Bush, and Obama.
That's right.
And got lots of stories to tell. You tell some of them in your book. You've told us some here today. And this book has really it's had you going everywhere. I mean, the talk shows, the podcasts, the news you've been on. Have you kept up with how many interviews you've done this year, maybe this year, or even recently?
I was trying initially, but each time they have an assassination attempt on Trump, the numbers skyrocket. And so, no, I've not kept track. My son's trying to download them and put them on my website, but I think he's about giving up too. So it's just a little bit inundated.
Well, and you mentioned having worked with Dan Bongino and been on his show a couple of different times. You mentioned to me earlier being with Trey Gowdy. Right. So you've done all of these national shows and then all the news from Fox to all the different ones, News Nation, I guess, all the different ones.
Well, I don't know if any of them have gotten out of me everything you've gotten, so I think you've given them a run for their money for sure. This has been
look, you've been willing to give it, so I've been willing to take it. So that's where we're at. But so the book, I mean, what you did in your career, obviously, in your walk with the Lord, but then the book has really it puts you out there, so to speak. And I know you're doing all of that, but you're also speaking at a lot of events, whether you can tell the type of events, but I know you're also available to speak to church groups, men's groups, things like that, but you also do a lot of corporate stuff. Things like, just tell folks what you're doing and how God's using all of this in your life.
Yeah, Cheating Death was published by Post Hill Press. It came out in April, and I guess it had enough success that the publisher said, let's do another one. So I've got another book coming out in February, and it's called Staying Sharp, and it's based on a chapter out of Cheating Death called Support and Challenge, and it's what I call the friendship challenge, because what I'm talking about in that chapter is the need for not only support in your life but also challenge, and I liken it to a knife being sharp on both sides. And so what I did was I created another book that's more like a devotional, and it's 52 supportive passages of scripture with my commentary, and then 52 challenge passages with commentary. So if you need a hug, you got 52 hugs coming in the form of scripture, and then back up. And if you need a kick in the seat, well, I got 52 of those as well to spur you on to good works and support and challenge. So
well, that's what I'm noticing in the book is you got so many different little principles and guides and steps, and you've used these in your life and in your career.
That's right. It's really 10 chapters of life advice with stories from the Secret Service to kind of back up the advice. And the original audience was my 3 sons, and so they're basically grown up now. The youngest of those is in college. So, it's been a pleasure for me to kind of have that platform from which to speak and to talk, and the book seems to have resonated with a lot of people. It hit number 2 on Amazon Christian Inspirational. So I'm hoping the Bible was number 1.
I hope so.
And I don't want to dislodge that, but I do get out and speak. I get asked to speak all over the place, and corporately, it's about leadership. And so I have a chapter in Cheating Death talking about leadership and my 24 years with the Secret Service, rising up to senior executive service there, and then getting out, being a senior vice president with corporate security and operational risk, and then forming my own company and going out and doing these speaking talks. But I also get with smaller groups, with church groups. I do a little bit of Sunday morning style preaching or Sunday night type speaking events. I talk about 9/11. I talk about my own salvation story, and mix in leadership and just life truths in all of that.
Yeah, well, you got more stories to tell than you could ever tell.
Well, that's true.
I mean,
I do have to be careful, but I try to walk that fine line and speak the truth and tell interesting stories without.
Do you sometimes see? Do you see footage on television of different presidents and remember I was there? Where does it just immediately click? You're in the background, or I was over here. Does that happen to you?
That's a great question. There are, especially with photos, where you have a second to look at that and say, "Wait a minute,
where's that at?" Yeah.
That's one of my shift agents. I'm in that photo. Where? Oh, there I am, and then it's over. But you can those periods of time with a certain set of people are all frozen in my mind, and so it's easy to go back to those. And one of them, every year on the anniversary of 9/11, they'll show different photos and different things. And on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, I was a supervisor on President Obama's detail, and we went to all 3 sites in one day on in 2011. And so there are a lot of photos from that and iconic memories of being there for that. So
how much changes as far as just the way things happen from president to president? I mean, I know the Secret Service have your protocols, of course, but presidents have their own personalities, and the way they do life and their family is different. Yeah. How much does it change from president to president?
It changes a lot.
I would imagine so.
In reality, the job doesn't change that much, but the personalities do. The way you go about doing the same job may change quite a bit. And I remember this. The example that comes to mind is when we transitioned from President Clinton to President Bush. We went from a president who liked to stay out late at night, that was always busy well into the evening, and that impacted how we did logistics as the president's Secret Service detail. About, we just had a few protocols that we had to follow, and that kind of mucked them up a little bit. And that's not the president's fault. They're supposed to go out and do whatever they want to do. Our job is to make the adjustment and protect them. President Bush, on the other hand, was completely predictable, which really helped, because we could now expect that our logistics plan is going to work, because we know he's going to get up early, he's going to go to bed early, and we can make this shift change here, and we could set our watch by what they said. So that was helpful. It's not better or worse, it's just helpful to know and to be able to count on these certain kind of things. And
you came in on the tail end of President Clinton.
That's right.
I imagine it was probably a pretty tense time for him, family, and all that. That second term, we won't go into all that, but
right.
You weren't there for all of that, I don't believe, but you in the aftermath maybe.
Right, and it was actually he wasn't getting out much that last year. Hillary Clinton was the one getting out. She was running for Senate, and so she was up in New York. Very, very busy, but President Clinton was not getting out that much. And so I don't remember going on too many trips that first year. I was a junior punk anyway. I wasn't going to get top billing for these things. But then when President Bush came in, things picked up immediately, and he was getting out and being seen and doing presidential things.
And President Obama, family man. I mean, he had daughters there and a mother-in-law living there, right? And all of that. So that had to be a different dynamic as well, because now you got a true family, a dad raising his daughters in the White House.
Right. The other thing about President Bush was his 2 daughters immediately started college.
Yeah.
And so that presented a lot of challenges for us, and things that we had to make the adjustment to do and to do well. And some of these things take time, so that was a big adjustment for us. And
did the kids, do they tend to resent the coverage, or are they glad for it, or does it cramp their style? I mean, I'm just guess it depends on the kid.
It kind of depended, and I think as the girls aged and grew,
Chelsea as well.
I know for a fact we were cramping their style. Any kid that's out there trying to make their way and figure life out, and you got these men and women that just won't leave you alone, and you have to tell them what you're planning to do. And how many college kids know what they're going to do at the end of the day? So it's lots of cool challenges.
Yeah. Do you feel, and I'm not asking for specifics, I'm just talking general, do you feel like the president and his wife, for the 3 you covered, obviously, did they look to the Secret Service? Hey, tell us what's going on, or if there's something we need to know, almost like another parent, like communicate with us, or do you stay out of that?
Oh, I definitely stayed out of it.
You don't get involved in the family dynamic.
There were very few times where my opinion was asked, and it was never about children. But I know there were some agents, especially the ones that were assigned full time to protect those kids, that they would have hard conversations with the parents at
Yeah,
times
that's what I'm
about,
asking. That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to tell them the truth about what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and maybe how difficult the kids are being. But at the same time, you just got to do your job. Whatever they're wanting to do or get into, as long as it's legal, we just need to make that environment safe for them.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. You've been more than generous, and we'll have you back again too. I'd love, we could talk all day long. And if you missed last hour, please go back and listen, because we talked about the current events and heard more of your testimony, heard your story from 9/11. All of that is in the podcast that'll be posted. So please go back and listen. The book, Cheating Death. I bet you're probably not getting too many, besides having too much scripture in it, I bet people are really enjoying this, aren't they?
I've been getting a lot of good feedback. I think people appreciate how personal it is, and some of the stories that have been told that they've maybe not heard anywhere else. So, it's been fun, good feedback, and a great platform to speak from.
Well, it certainly is. And if people would like to reach you, contact you, or have you come out and be a part of something they're doing, just KennethValentine.com.
Yes, sir.
They can reach you there. And again, he's here in studio with us. Ken is, and he's local.
That's
so
right.
You don't have to. You're flying all over the country, but our folks listening, many of them maybe are just right here local, and hopefully they'll get you out and make them a part of some of the things you're doing. You got a great message, and you communicate it very well, and the book is outstanding. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your service, and thank you for your time today.
Yes, sir, Greg. Proud to be here.
Yeah. All right. Hang on, everybody, and we'll be right back.